Okay, it's 5 o'clock and I'll call to order the meeting of the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission. And we'll start off with the script for remotely conducted open meetings. The public participation guidelines: members of the public wishing to participate in the meeting must use their full name for Zoom access. If full names are not used, people will not be allowed to participate in the discussion. The town reserves the right to remove any member of the public from the meeting who doesn't use a full name or accent appropriately. As a preliminary matter, this is Arthur Gasparo, Nantucket Airport Commission Chairman. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Ms. Topham?
Here.
Mr. Marks?
Here.
Ms. Planzer?
Here.
And staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mr. Rafter?
Here.
Mr. Carberg?
Here.
Mr. Carberg?
Here.
Thank you. Ms. Perales?
Here.
Ms. Stigova Nelson?
Here.
And anticipated speakers, Mr. Lasden?
Here.
Thank you. Good evening. This open meeting of the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts 2021. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission is convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. The meeting will be aired at a later time on the Town of Nantucket YouTube channel. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for the effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to unmute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait till the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. For items of public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public that have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names, be acknowledged by, and speak through the chair. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. And with that, I will move on to the agenda. Are there any comments, questions, or concerns on the agenda as posted and published? Hearing none, we'll consider that adopted by unanimous consent. We have the draft minutes for our meeting of December 14th. Are there any comments, questions, or concerns on the draft minutes?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Rafter.
Just for clarification, I wanted to make sure everybody was aware. I reported that the Mooney Association was interested in a potential meeting at the airport in the fall. And I misspoke. It's a fall of 2023, not 2022. So I just want to clarify that for the minutes.
Okay, we can get those updated, please. Is there a motion to adopt the minutes?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
A second.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Ms. Planzer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We have the ratify the December 15th and January 5th warrants. Are there any questions or a motion to ratify?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Ms. Planzer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Is there any public comment tonight for items which are not otherwise on the agenda? If you would please raise your hand or speak up. I'm not seeing any. So we will move on to the public hearing to consider the proposed revisions to the airport's rates and charges. And I have a brief statement that I would like to read. This is a public hearing on January 11, 2022 for the proposed rates and charges update. Welcome this evening. We're holding the public hearing on the proposed changes to the Nantucket Memorial Airport rates and charges. The Nantucket Memorial Airport routinely reviews and updates the rates and charges assessed to airport users. The goal in establishing the fees is to provide fair and reasonable rates charged on an equitable basis to recover the costs associated with the operation and maintenance of the airport. The airport faces a number of capital improvement needs in the next 5 to 10 years. Infrastructure is aging, the purchase power of the airport improvement program discretionary grant funding is decreasing, and the costs of construction on island are often double that of the mainland. In order to maintain economic sustainability where direct airport users bear the cost for operating the airport instead of taxpayers, a carefully managed rates and charges structure is essential to recover costs, pay for operation, and plan for future infrastructure repairs. The current revision is part of an ongoing effort to identify and compartmentalize the actual costs of operating airport lines of business. As one might expect, the cost of staffing a fire station is higher on Nantucket than in Barnstable, and the cost of repaving an apron is higher than in the Vineyard. Despite these expenses, historical and proposed revisions to aeronautical rates remain lower than industry comparable airports and competitive for non-hub and small hub commercial service airports. Highlights of the proposed revisions include developing an employment-based method to assign costs for shared use passenger space in the terminal. This method will ensure costs are equitably prorated to airlines based on their actual passenger impacts. Revising the ramp fee for terminal operating tenants to a per turn basis and reassigning from a lease item to an activity basis. Establishing and assessing a checked bag fee, revising the ticket counter fee to a per position basis. And with that, we will move on to the public hearing. And I would like to turn it over to Mr. Rafter.
Actually, Mr. Chair, I'm going to turn it over to Noah. He has a brief presentation and he'll go through the changes that are proposed for the rates and charges.
Floor is yours, Mr. Carberg.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Rafter. With your permission, I have 3 short documents that I'll screen share before turning it back over to you for commissioner and public comment. I've assembled a few slides to support the public hearing. Wanted to review the process that we took before the meeting today. We did reach out and have stakeholder consultation. We held an initial meeting with the airlines on November 12th. We provided a revised rate sheet for their comment on December 10th. And we also distributed to them individual draft pro formas, looking at what these changes would mean for them as adopted for this hearing using their past air service as a comparison. I want to say that I see a couple airline attendees as participants today. I wanted to say, I appreciate their involvement. These airline representatives, they have 1 to 200 stations, airports across the country. So it's nice to get this level of what really is collaborative feedback from them. So I appreciate that. There are 2 items we received, I think, really good comments on, and these were regarding a minimum assessment of 250 square feet for office space. We actually found an error. We've since been back to the airline who brought this comment to our attention. I'll get to that in a second. And our definition of signatory, we had a few questions about how we defined our signatory operators. Of course, we have a history of defining signatory as our year-round operators. For this rates and charges exercise, we're focused on the terminal, and the terminal is the cost center. There are a few items important to the terminal center, and that's that we continue through this effort to support our year-round service via fee waivers, and that we look to recapture our full cost for providing seasonal service from our operators. I don't think we've tried to hide the fact that This does represent a fee increase for our seasonal operators, but with the following caveats: that it's commensurate with the facility impact that these operators now have at Nantucket, as we've shifted from a 135 year-round market to a highly seasonal Part 121 market. Not only assigns the cost for those airlines, but it's also really specific to each airline's individual impact. These airlines all run different equipment, different passenger profiles, and we believe this system accounts for that. We're not at all, we're not unsympathetic towards the airline's economic arguments. We have looked into what the airline cost per in-plane passenger, that's the acronym CPE. And we think, what this represents for airline CPEs are reasonable. And, we remind the commission that airline yields are traditionally very high for Nantucket, which can offset even a moderate CPE increase. And as I'll review, we do have a phased approach to the ramp fee assessment. This could represent a very large scale fee revision to the airlines. So we proposed a policy for phasing this in over 5 years. The other large increase is instituting a bag fee. It's been a to be determined item on our rate sheet for a number of years. We're going forward with a bag fee this year because it's really to support a project that will help benefit the passenger experience and our post-screening passenger space. In my final 3 slides, I'm highlighting the major changes in rates and charges from previous years. The items that I've highlighted in red are new or changed items since I presented the introductory information to you in the previous month. So on page 1 of our rate sheet for consideration, we've added additional guidance on the signatory definition. We've changed the assessment for ticket counters on page 1, and we've also changed the assessment for common space to an enplanement-based metric. On page 2, we've established the airline bag fee, and we've changed the assessment for ramp fee. And then we corrected the remain overnight rounding error that Tom discovered. It was really just on the order of 50 cents per item. It's a very minor change, but we did want to call it out. For our non-signatory fees, these will really mirror, in many cases, the signatory fees, the same assessment changes for ticket counters, common space, bag fee, ramp fee, and the rounding error. So these are the same items. They're just also called out on additional pages. Under use, service, and administrative fees on page 10 and page 11, we've added an abandoned equipment fee, and we've redefined the unsecured equipment. Specifically on page 11, we had a definition of off-season that was related to an agreement term. It would be more appropriate if we related it to when air service starts and ends for a different airline. So that's the purpose of the red text on page 11. For vehicle parking, we've updated our violation fee schedule to reflect the same fee schedule in place by the Nantucket Police Department. And on page 16 for our advertising package, we've updated our seasonal miscellaneous product availability. I believe there's a category of advertisement that will no longer make available seasonally. It will just be an annual charge. Okay, that's for 30 seconds while I switch over to a different document. Okay. So this is the item that should be in the packet, and I'm going to go through this just very quickly. Our attendants can see that it's open and available, and I can share this screen. But our rates and charges, first page covers aeronautical fees for signatory terminal users. all of the changes outlined in red. Of course, the major changes are to the ticket counter assessment, the common use square footage assessment methodology for the outdoor boarding area as well, the institution of baggage fees, and the per turn ramp fees. Non-signatory terminal user, it's the same class of fees. I'm not going to highlight all of them. The large text excision is related to the seasonal ramp fee that is now replaced by the per turn ramp fee. And of course, addition by subtraction, what you don't see are changes to hangar tenants, tie down tenants, FBO services. And again, on page 10, we'll pick up the changes to the use, service, and administrative fees for abandoned equipment, off-season storage. And I believe our last change is parking violations, fees to mirror what is charged by the police department, the collection fees. Sorry, I went over that a little quickly. The collection fees and our advertising fee changes. And the last item, which is under its own agenda item, but I do want to reference it very quickly because it is related. Is our policy related to the rates and charges revisions to phase in the ramp fee. So again, for incumbent terminal-based tenant operators subject to the rates and charges, we recognize that this is a large fee. We want to introduce it in a phased approach in a non-discriminatory manner. So we've capped the percentage values over year to year. We'll equally apply them to all airlines. And it assigns the assessment and the updates to be provided by airport staff. So that concludes my introductory material, Mr. Chair, so I'll turn it back over to you for commissioner and public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Carberg. That was very helpful. I'll open it up first to commissioners. Any questions, comments, or concerns with the proposed changes to the rates and charges?
No.
Seeing none, I'll open it up to the public. Any questions, comments, or concerns, please raise your hand and I would be happy to recognize you. Mr. Satari?
Sestari.
One more time?
Sestari.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for letting me join tonight. Southern has been operating at Nantucket since 2019. I recognize some of you from our initial presentation there. I want to commend airport management for doing such thorough analysis on the cost benefit of the rates. As you're aware, Nantucket is a very peaky destination. Southern Airways flies to 40 destinations around the US. We operate 350 flights a day, including 175 in Hawaii, where we have a lot of the same visitor versus local situations. This is the first season that Southern will be flying year-round. And after 2 years of analysis, we have designed a shoulder season and off-season campaign to basically serve island residents. The big airlines come into Nantucket between Memorial Day and Labor Day. They skim the cream and they bring lots of visitors to the island, which is great. We're there on days like today when it's 10 degrees to take folks off of the island. There are 2,000 seats a day in the summer. There's 200 days in the winter. The new rate structure will allow us to grow our operation. We currently operate from Nantucket to Bedford, Mass, New Bedford, Mass, to Providence, Rhode Island, and to Norwood. We operate daily service year-round. We operate Cessna Caravan aircraft, which have large cargo components, so that when island residents are flying over to shop at a big box store, they can bring their microwave oven home on the plane at no additional cost. We operate with 2 pilots, which, given the weather in Nantucket, we see as a big benefit. And most of all, we keep our fares low. Our lowest fare off the island is only $49, which is very competitive with the ferry. We are the fastest growing commuter airline in the country, and we hope and plan to expand our operations in Nantucket. It's a great destination for us, and we hope that you will consider the thoughtful work that's gone into these new fares that will allow us to serve not just visitors, but most importantly, island residents in the months and the years ahead. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to make any comments on the proposed changes to the rates and charges? Amira Trebnevich?
Amira, thank you. Hi, hello. Thanks, everyone. And thanks to the airport team for the presentation that was made and walking us through on an earlier consultation, the agreement. I appreciate and understand the rates and charges changes. There was I think at one point I made a request for consideration for a tweak to those changes to consider, instead of a fixed fee, to make it entirely employment fee for common use, to make it based on employment shares. So I'm hopeful that might still be under consideration. And then also, I hadn't seen until today the change for a minimum office space, and office space is difficult to come by in Nantucket. So for those that might lease less than 250 square feet, to pay a minimum of 250 square feet, if only 170 might be available, would request that maybe we could consider, just instead of the minimum, have pay what you use for. So that was it, just 2 items of requesting consideration, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Is there, and I'll go through all of the public and then we'll come back and have discussion on the comments. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak? You could use the raise hand function or speak up.
Yes, this is James Seeley from American Airlines. Thank you for the time and the presentation. I am still getting my hands around this new rate methodology. The airport has provided me with some additional feedback on that, since I was unable to participate in the meetings back in December. American Airlines is of the opinion that there should be continue of the common use, a 20/80 combination, as there's a fixed component to the expenses at the airport that should be shared by all carriers that operate within that airport itself. To Amira's comments in regards to the square footage, American has also inquired about that, which I have received some kind of response back from the airports, and will be verified once the new rates and charges have been finalized. I would like some additional information required in regards to the deferment of the baggage over the next 5 years and how it was determined that the airport assessed this amount at the current dollar amount with the ability to waive such a increased value over this period of time. And I'm trying to understand that assessment and deferment over the next few periods. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Seidler. Any other public comments? I don't see anyone else on the attendee list. Mr. Carberg, could I defer to you for some responses to the two comments, please?
Of course. Thank you, through you to Amira and James, thanks again. Again, they see hundreds of airports, so they do have a lot of knowledge with standard practices, workable methods at other airports. Regarding the 250 square feet minimum, the question had come up because American has 176 square feet of office space and Delta has 170 square feet of office space. And I believe they both made the point that, well, should you really be charging us a 250 square foot minimum when there is no office space available? If we wanted more office space, if they want more office space, I don't believe we could assign them more office space right now. However, there was an error that we'd accidentally made in the airport's favor where we didn't account for the counter square footage that would apply to each of their minimums. So American has 4 positions at a total of 200 square feet of counter, which would put them at 376 square feet of space. So they would be above the minimum assessment. So instead of being assessed $10,000 for office space, they would only be assessed $7,040 for office space based off of their actual assessment. Delta is something similar. They'll be a shade under $7,000 for their true office space assessment. So I believe that issue has been reconciled and will be to everyone's satisfaction. I believe a question was asked about baggage fees. For clarification, I believe this is in response to Mr. Seidler's question from American Airlines. The baggage fees are not subject per our proposal, our policy proposal, for a 5-year waiver. They would be assessed as they are in the rates and charges immediately. The ramp fees are the only fees that would be assessed according to policy and staged in over 5 years. This is because the ramp fees can be are a potential 500 and some % increase for some airlines, instantaneously. They can be a very large ticket item where the baggage fees aren't on the same order of magnitude. The reason for the waiver of ramp fees, I may ask, I won't ask for some clarification through you yet, but the ramp fee waiver is related to our signatory airlines. We have fee waiver policies that have long been established for our airlines that provide year-round service. A ramp fee waiver is one of these. A reduced landing fee is one of these. Fuel discounts is another item that's available. We've always had a system of fee waivers available for our year-round operators. And we've continued that with the ramp fee approach and the baggage fee approach. I think the important thing for the commission to recognize from airport management point of view is that the fee waiver afforded to our signatory airlines does not come at the expense of our seasonal airlines. In other words, we don't look at the amount of these fees that are waived by Cape and Southern Airlines and then reassess them to our remaining airlines. They're just amounts that go unassessed and uncollected by the airport, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. I'll take this back to the commission. I think maybe we should just have a brief discussion on each of these points. specific to the minimum size, is that something that the commission thinks that we should keep in there? Is it, and I also would defer back to you, Mr. Carberg, or Mr. Rafter, if you'd like to join the discussion. Is it really necessary? And I also wonder, along the comments that were made, is it really fair? In this case, maybe it's irrelevant because they're above that, but what if somebody else was it? Is it really right if you're only providing, say, 170 square feet? Should you really charge them for 250? I mean, is the minimum required, I guess, would be the discussion that I would put to the commission.
If I may, Mr. Chair, also a little more.
Yes, Mr.
background.
Rafter.
That stems from I think an older version of the, well, it's still current, but an old minimum standards requirement where, I think the effort was to try to establish that somebody have at least a significant presence in the terminal as an airline. So I agree that it's fair to charge the actual, especially as Noah said, since we don't have the additional space, and we would just simply modify our minimum standards.
So if I may, back to you then, we would, in the rates and charges document, just strike the minimum.
I think that's correct. That's a proper way to do that, yes.
Commissioners, thoughts? Do you agree or disagree on such a change? Mr. Marks?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think you should be paying for what you're using, and especially because like they said, it's not like we have it to give to them. So, should make a minimum that we can't even provide.
Does anybody feel differently? Okay, so it seems like by unanimous consent, we would modify the draft rates and charges to strike the minimum minimum area charge. And then the other discussion regarding the baggage, I'm satisfied with Mr. Carberg's explanation. Does anybody else have anything further on that item or wish to make any suggested changes? Okay, hearing none. Does anybody have anything further on the proposed rates and charges? Is there a motion to adopt the rates and charges as proposed with the one change just discussed regarding the minimum area size on the offices?
I make the motion to
And
adopt.
is there a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Planzer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Topham,
Aye.
Mr. Marks,
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. With thanks to staff as well as to the public participants. We appreciate your input. Thank you. That motion carries unanimously. We'll moving on to the airline tenant rates and charges ramp fee phase-in period policy, which Mr. Carberg had briefly put up at the end of his presentation.
Excuse me,
believe-
Chairman.
Yes, Ms.
I
Prowse.
think you have to close the public hearing.
Thank you. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Planzer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Topham,
Aye.
Mr. Marks,
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin.
Aye.
I don't see a need to revote what was already voted unless staff feels differently. Okay, moving on to the phase-in period policy. Mr. Carberg, do you think we could share the screen again on that and we could have discussion to the extent needed?
Of course.
Thank you. Are there any questions or discussion concerning the policy that is before you for the implementation over the next 5 years for the ramp charges? Any comments from the public? I would entertain public comment on this. Choose the raise hand feature. Not seeing any. Is there a motion to adopt the policy as drafted?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Rafter.
I believe Mr. Seidler has his hand up. It appears.
I see that now. Yes, Mr. Seidler, the motion has been made and seconded, but we will certainly entertain your comments, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Rafter. I think I'm just trying to understand that the interest in increasing these rates to the magnitude that the airport is proposing because of increased costs at the airport. I'm trying to understand the rhyme and reason why they would waive some of these ramp fee charges during this period if there is such a escalation of cost on the airfield side at this time.
Mr. Rafter or Mr. Carberg?
I'll let Noah address that, but I think I know the answer, but we're
Mr. Carberg, would you like to field that?
Sure. So I think there are two important answers. The first one is philosophical. We have our year-round operators to credit for year-round activity fees in the form of landing, car rentals, ancillary passenger-related revenue that really keeps the airport afloat through year-round cash flow, year-round operating revenue. The other item is our year-round operators are all operating very small, very light aircraft. They weigh under 8,000 pounds. And it's hard to make an argument that these operators are impacting ramps to the same extent that aircraft 80,000 pounds to 100,000 to even in the future we're going to have aircraft 144,000 pounds. Space issues are important, but it's vertical pavement construction that we're planning for in our capital improvement program and our out years to make sure that we can continue to operate the ramp safely into the capacity that's demanding on it.
Thank you.
No, this is James again. I completely, maybe I'm not phrasing my question correctly. I understand what you're saying with the signatory carriers there that operate year-round. Completely understand that. What I'm trying to understand is that the airport is proposing a significant increase in cost for the ramp on the ramp or the airfield side and assessing and determine a cost, but you are looking to not capture that entire cost within the year, but do it over a period of time. And that's what I'm trying to understand is if you're saying that you have this increased cost, why are you assessing a fee but not collecting the entire amount?
Sure, I'll jump in on that, Mr. Seidler. From my participation in planning with the airport for the last decade, I see a lot of it as related to our capital improvement projects and knowing what we have out ahead of us, at the same time trying to be sensitive to all of our tenants, including yourself, so that this could be a phased in and absorbed approach.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
Is there any further comments on the policy? So hearing none, we had a motion on the table, which has been made and seconded. Any further discussion from the commissioners? Hearing none, Ms. Plansner, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Topham,
Aye.
Mr. Marks,
Aye.
and Mr. Buscarin.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. That carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Coburg. So we're moving on to pending leases and contracts as set forth on Exhibit 1, and I'll turn this over to Mr. Rafter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I go on, I'd like to thank Noah, Jamie, Katie, and Boyana for a lot of their hard work on those rates and charges. It was a pretty big lift, so I appreciate it. On the contracts, the first one we have is a landowner consent agreement with National Grid. It's an interconnect agreement for solar array on 25 Bunker Road. The next three are car rental agreements, the Hertz Corporation for $77,825, thrift car rental doing business as Nantucket Windmill for $76,200, Nantucket Auto Rental, DBA Nantucket Island Rental Car at $74,975. And then we have a contract amendment with Track Builders. That's for the that's a change order to the fuel farm of $236,332.48. It's made up of a number of different changes that are outlined in your packet. There's a lot of discussion. Our OPM represented us very well on this. We've got all the detailed information there. And the next and final is a contract amendment with Lawrence Lynch for $123,730. That's a change order to the Taxiway E project. There were a number of things that came in for change orders that we were requested by FAA to add to the Taxiway Echo project, as well as we made a change in some of the phasing of this last phase to allow us, as we proceed into the next phase, to continue operation and around Taxiway Juliet.
Thank you, Mr. Rafter. Is there any questions, discussion, comments on the pending leases and contracts?
I thank Mr. Rafter for explaining to Lawrence Lynch, because I thought they should have had a lot of those proposals, but I guess because FAA has changed it, that's what made the many what I call late add-ons.
And the good news is FAA is funding it at 100%. So
Very good news.
Is there a motion to approve the pending leases and contracts?
I'll make that motion.
And is there a second?
I'll
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Planzer,
Aye.
Ms. Topham,
Aye.
Mr. Marks,
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin.
aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you. We're moving on to pending matters. We have the capital approval process home rule petition. Do we have any updates, Mr. Rafter?
Yes, last Wednesday, Noah and I had a meeting with Senator Sears, Chief of Staff, and it was on another matter regarding they were trying to repeal sales tax on aircraft, but we had brought up the home rule petition, and she informed us that it is now in the Senate and that she'll be looking into that and getting back to us if they have any questions. So we're hoping to get an update very soon from her and get that moving through the Senate process.
Thank you. Any questions for anyone on the home rule petition? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to the Pfas investigation update.
Turn it back to Noah.
Thank you, Tom. I have 5 items for my PFAS report. It's a little bit longer than last month, so I apologize. There is an activity report table in your packet. We're still reflecting 500 samples collected from 77 wells. Quarterly POET monitoring samples have been received and are displayed in the current period columns. The good news, all POETs continue to perform with effluent at no detect levels for PFAS. Additionally, we have been monitoring a home on Matagasham Valley Road. I say we, the consultant team has been monitoring this home It was under but near 20 parts per trillion, as well as being located adjacent to a home with a high reading. This most recent sampling resulted in a detection of over 20 parts per trillion. So this home will be added to our water service connection list. The residents have already been receiving bottled water out of an abundance of caution, and they will have already, they were already identified to receive a curb stop. So we've told the consultant team to go ahead, and they've made contact with the residents to start the process of planning the water service connection. For updates on task orders and phase 2 status, soil data was received from the airport landside fence boundary along Monahanset Road. This was a sampling that was done to inform the water main crossing location. We found in 4 locations that there were S1 level exceedances for Pfas in the shallow soil. The immediate outcome that was advised by this data was to move the water main crossing point up approximately 400 feet to the northeast on Monahanset Road. So the crossing point, if you've driven that road, you'll see the patch is approximately halfway down the southwest ramp instead of directly adjacent to gate 30B. A future outcome will be more specific to the soil delineation, as will be advised by the LSP. But for now, our focus has been on the water main impact and review of the incoming groundwater data. Related to that, the consultant team is assembling and graphing the received data in advance of a February presentation to the commission. Tom and I expect to receive a draft of that presentation later this month for review. It'll be our first time seeing that data as well, so we're excited. We have the following outreach planned for that commission meeting presentation. We'll give an FYI to our town counterparts and to the DEP, but we're not planning on reaching out to the DEP to invite them as participant attendees. Now, the information will be posted to the website after our meeting, and we believe that you would want a public question period after the presentation, after the commission questions and comments after the presentation. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to plan the agenda so we may dismiss the consultants after the presentation is concluded, rather than catch public comments at the end. And if there are other involvement strategies, we're asking for commission guidance commensurate with their approach to the meeting. If this is something you would want to be posted on the website, distributed through social media, email, notice in the paper, things of that nature. The next IRIS status report will be released at the end of February, and that will also reflect the presentation data. Would you like me to pause there, Mr. Chair, for the question about other involvement strategies, or would you like me to continue?
Sure. Commissioners, any questions or input on the involvement strategies?
Just one question. I don't know if Noah had a chance to speak with the individual we mentioned at the last meeting on a face-to-face basis, just to give him some advice with regard to what we could spend money on and what we were precluded from spending money on.
Mr. Coburg?
So I have made that outreach to that resident, actually a smaller group of residents related to that email. No one has taken me up on that offer yet, but it remains open. We remain available.
Good. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Anything else? Why don't we continue on? Mr. Coburg, please.
Okay, for the water service project, no homes are substantially completed yet. By that, I mean where they have the full complement of public, private side, interior plumbing, and site restoration. MJ and RBO are arranging for the interior plumbing work to occur. And, we hope to have good news that that's going to happen soon. But again, as I'm tracking these items, I still don't have any homes to report on substantial completion yet, but we look forward to that. We have 2 homes on Nobodere Way that still require curb stop installation. Wanacoma Water Company is coordinating with Holgate and Longfin, who remain incredibly busy. For our part, we have authorized a separate mobilization for RBO to do the interior plumbing for the homes that I mentioned previously. These were going to be all be done. These were going to be completed in one fell swoop, but I think we're all better off if we just authorize the separate mobilizations, take these homes as they are ready, and move them off of our list into completion. Looking forward to February, there are 3 homes off of the Skyline Drive, Monahans area, where we have anticipated progress dates for February, where McFarland Johnson is coordinating the water service agreements. So as we did for the Nobodere Way and related homes, we will go forward with the public side excavation will be complete with the water main project. We'll go forward with the private side excavation and the plumbing for those 3 homes. Then in the near future for Medicsham Valley Road homes, we're going to seek a change order with Robert B. Hour to contract for the private side excavation, plumbing, and site restoration, with more to come on that in the next 2 weeks. For the water main project, I have a figure I'd like to share. One moment. So the blue areas indicate completed portions of the water main. I'll have that open while I walk through it. For Skyline Drive, the main has been constructed, connected to woodlands, pressure tested and chlorine tested. The remaining work involves the curb stops. Installation of those curb stops began this week. There are some deteriorating patches that are in the process of being repaired with concrete. I actually believe those have been completed as of early this week or late last week. And for Medicsham Valley Road, the main from the corner of Evergreen and Airport Road has been constructed along Monahans, has moved onto airport property and across the runway 6 approach. And the directional drilled areas on Medicsham Valley Road as indicated. The next steps for that portion on the week of January 24th for a day to a day and a half, we're anticipating daytime runway 624 closures for trenching work in the glide slope critical area to continue that work to the east. And we will also be renoticing the night work and emergency access procedures to maintain access to homes on Medicsham Valley Road. Last item I have is related to public communication. We've been updating the website with the project schedule and the look ahead items. And as I mentioned previously, we performed outreach to the residents as we discussed in the previous meeting. We haven't had a response yet, but we remain open and available. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions from Mr. Carberg or general discussion on the PFAS update or the water main project?
Just have one question.
Yes, Mr. Marks.
Yeah, I mentioned last month, I think the migration, is that still to come, Noah? From the sampling, are we seeing any of the migration that we expected to see with regards to water flows of the PFAS?
I'm not entirely sure that I follow.
So originally, originally we've been told, right, that all this is supposed to be migrating to the south, right? The water flows, right? So I was curious if through the sampling that we're doing, if we're seeing that be a reality. So are we seeing that the wells to the north are lessening as it moves through? Do we see it increasing in the south? So that I'm just wondering if there's some hope that eventually it will flush itself out. That's why I'm asking. Just curious.
Sure. So with my non-professional opinion, I think that's a very good question for the consultant team when they're here next week. As I look over the sort of the repeat data for our poet and residence poets that shows the influent concentration, these concentrations have remained fairly stable. At least in the the data that I've reviewed, I haven't seen a drop off that would indicate what you mentioned, that it's migrating through and out. What I've seen tends to be fairly consistent levels.
Thank you.
Anything else? Any of the commissioners? Okay, thank you for the update, Mr. Carberg, and please do keep us posted. I would just add, I did see Robert B. Hour's crew out working today, on those connections, pretty coldest day of the year, and they're still going forward. So I think that's really, really positive. This is certainly, while a challenging time of year, it's the best time of year. A lot of other factors, from a Nantucket perspective, to try to get something like this done. So thank you to them. And yes,
Mr.
Mr.
Chair.
Marks.
Yeah, just wanted to also comment with the directional boring guys. They were great crew. They were very professional and great at answering questions about what they were doing, and my curiosity and just being, letting everybody know out there whenever you asked a question what's going on, and did a nice job cleaning up after themselves. So
Appreciate that. Thank you. With that, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is to ratify the Mass DOT grant award for Airport Improvement Project 72 to reconstruct Taxiway E, the state portion for Taxiway F and Aprons taxi lanes in the amount of $344,237.60. Is there a motion to ratify the grant award or any particular questions?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Thank you. We have to ratify, next item on the agenda is to ratify the TSA other transactional agreement for the baggage belt reimbursement in the order, in the amount of $155,606.60. Are there any questions or discussion or a motion to ratify the OTA? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to ratify the OTA.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is to ratify the FAA Concession Rent Relief Airport Rescue Grant Agreement, AIP 79, in the amount of $115,509. Are there any questions, comments, discussion on the grant agreement? And if not, is there a motion to ratify the grant agreement?
I'll make that
So
motion.
moved.
Motion's been made, and is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Ms. Topham? Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. And with that, we'll move on to finance, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Rafter for update on the recent capital committee meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last Tuesday, we met with the Capital Committee to address some questions they had regarding our housing project. And once we took them through the model that McFarland Johnson had created for us, I think they, all their questions were answered. Basically, what the model does is, once we can establish what the cost per square foot is, we plug that in and it will tell you all the outputs from there. So as we move forward with that project, we'll have, begin the conceptual layouts and designs and things. And as we get bid pricing in, we'll be able to plug that in and look at what the long-term financial impacts will be to the airport. And one other note on the finance side, tomorrow night, I'm scheduled to present our budget to the select board. So I'll be doing that. You've already adopted that, I believe, the last meeting or one before it. So any questions before I go into the manager's report?
Anyone? Nope, please proceed.
Okay, on the project side of the house, taxiway Echo, we had meetings last week with the contractor and the engineer to discuss some change orders as well as the restart of the project. They're hoping to be back out here in March. That will be the final phase of that large project and should be complete. The security phase 2 project, contractor was out last week addressing some gate issues, and the subcontractor will be out next month to finish the doors. The fuel farm rehabilitation project is moving forward very well. The skids are due in this month. We still anticipate a February or March completion, and we're starting the coordination efforts with removal of the temporary fuel farm and commissioning of the new farm. The runway 1230 decommissioning, we're working with the taxiway Echo contractor and their sub to have that work done as early as possible in the spring, hopefully April. The crew quarters housing project, we have an RFQ for the project manager out to the public. The hangar development, Hagedorn Aviation, there was a meeting held yesterday with their contractor. They're looking to begin work next week. Exhibit A, we worked with McFarland on that, but the outcome is going to be another task order to clean up and identify a number of the parcels. Some of you may be aware as you go into the GIS for the town. Some of them are labeled as airport property, some are town in Nantucket. So we're going to clean all of those things up. And Noah just reported on the water main project. In the RFP and bids, we're working with McFarland on the security system, preventative maintenance, if you will, IFB. And we have an RFQ for the terminal space optimization. We selected CHA and we're creating a contract. The HVAC project, we, again, as I mentioned last meeting, did not receive any bids, and we're working with the town on potential next steps. There was a contract similar to what we had put out on the street by the police department. They received 2 bids, so we're going to see if there's any way we can work with them on that. The OPM I mentioned before for the housing, that's due in on January 25th. And the concession space RFP for the hold room is being developed. On the operations side, in the town's budget, they're seeking 2 additional law enforcement officers, primarily for the airport. And we're getting a little concerned there may be a shortage of police officers, but we're going to monitor that and make sure we have adequate coverage next year. December fuel stats, the Jet A gallons sold were up 51% over last year. It's the second highest since 2011. And the total fuel sales were up 94% over last year. It's the highest in the past 11 years. Again, it's all relative, price of fuel and so on. But when we look back over 11-year history, that's the highest it's been. So that's good news. And last week, we had our first snow of the season. Our crew did a great job removing the snow and getting the airport open in a timely manner. So I congratulate them for that. Statistics are in your package. It's the time of year, as Mr. Sestari said, we have 2 airlines operating year round. I can go into the detail if you'd like, but we're still seeing some good progress there. However, freight was down over last year, still up year to date. And on the noise side of the house, we had 1 complaint, and that was related to the C-17 operations with the presidential movement. On the personnel side of the house, I'm pleased to announce that Preston Harriman has been selected as our compliance manager. Additionally, we're seeking to fill some positions in maintenance and operations. So if anyone knows anyone interested in work, please send them our way. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Rafter. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Rafter on his report? I had one, Mr. Rafter, you hit pretty quickly on the fuel farm. And I know we just did we did the contract with the changes. Are we still on track, on schedule, even with those changes? And, when is the anticipated completion date?
Yes, the initial schedule, we're behind about 2 weeks because of the delivery of the skids, but they are due in by the end of this month. And it should be wrapped up by late February, early March, and be out of here.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any comments for Mr. Rafter or questions on his report? Okay, hearing none. We'll move on to commissioners' comments. Any commissioners have any comments for any items not on the agenda? I have one. I attended the Conservation Commission meeting last week, and I just wanted to mention that our consultants were before the commission with a notice of intent application that was related to the relocation of the perimeter road and a portion of the perimeter road and the fence near the top of the coastal dune bank along Nobodere Beach. And I thought they did a very thorough and good job. And there were some questions from the commissioners, and I thought that the consultant fielded them well. Happy to see that moving forward before it's actually a completely critical type. And I know we're close, but we're there, and I was happy to see that permitting move forward. And thank you, Rich, as well, to your team, and Mr. Carver was also in attendance. I didn't participate; I just observed, but it went well. Thank you. Anything further from any commissioners? Any other public comment? Use the hand raise function. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to enter executive session for general law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, to review the executive session minutes enumerated on the agenda for possible release. For clause 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, where the chair has determined that an open session may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the Airport Commission. And clause 3, discuss strategy with respect to litigation regarding Walsh, where the chair has determined an open session may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the Airport Commission. Is there such a motion not to return to open session?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Ms. Planzer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Thank you all very much for attending and participating.
Thank you very much.